Go ahead, we're recording.
Okay, perfect. All right. So we're going to start with the fourth chapter, was integrity, and that was for me to kind of pick out the bullet points. I love this chapter. I started out when I pulled my notes together. One of the things, if you think it, you speak it, you act it, it happens. And basically, kind of what was behind that was the words are the engine that sets actions into motion. So we have to be very careful. I think your words are very important in shaping your lives. And you can use them to kind of fuel you to, like he says, to take the stairs. So the first thing that I kind of, let's see, what was this? Okay, putting it into existence. One of the first bullet points was inventing possibility. And kind of includes this kind of bottom line is be careful for what you wish for. The second thing is expressing gratitude, and this has always been my mantra. I used to end every day kind of just putting about 3 bullet points down of things that I was grateful for, and some days it's a little bit harder than others. Well, I've kind of changed how I've done this probably in the last year. So now I start out in the morning and I write my 3 things down that I'm grateful for. And they're kind of they become more of my daily affirmation. And then when I get to night, which is when I usually journal, then I kind of recall the 3 amazing things that happened to me that day and how I can make it better. So I guess the bottom thing is I want to tell you, when you express gratitude, I think it affects everything about you. You feel good. You get up, you have focus, you know exactly. I think it's that self, I guess, is really what I'm trying to say, that it just really kind of gets you on the right page. And I think the best part of it is when I journal, someday it's
Lost you.
We're literally hearing crickets.
Yeah, and I just, her face is froze. Is it froze on your screen?
Yeah, she must have a weak signal.
And I'm the cricket person. Do you want me to go inside?
No, I like it.
Okay.
Oh, there she went away.
So she might be logging back in. We'll give her a second.
I'm sorry, you guys. Is she on chapter 4?
Yes.
That's what I thought. Okay.
And I'm trying to type as fast as she talks. At least she talks slower than me, so I can try to get that down. And then I don't think I sent out the notes the last time because I think we were only halfway done, but this time we'll be more complete. And I didn't have a recording last time because I was having issues.
Yeah, we missed you.
No, that was the time before. I recorded the one that was for the organization. That I got to work. But the last time we were on just the call for just this, for some reason it wasn't recognizing me as a host and I couldn't hit the record button. All right, well, I guess in the meantime, maybe could we jump to schedule with Amy Robb?
Sure.
All right, go ahead, Miss Amy.
Okay. Hi, guys.
Hey.
So he starts the chapter with the farmer's analogy, which I thought was pretty powerful, that they don't have a choice in how much they work when it's harvest time, and you just do what you have to do in the time allotted. And he says the law of the harvest says focused effort is amplified by appropriate timing and regimented routine, which is kind of the main idea of the entire chapter. So then he goes on to talk about the myths of time management, and we've all said it. I'm too busy to, whatever. And he says the problem is not everything that we can do in a day, but rather everything that we should do in the day. And we've been led astray by this idea of balance, that we have to be able to have equal or even time management, this whole work-life balance. And he clarifies that and says that balance should mean appropriate time spent on critical priorities. And then the next chapter kind of, or not chapter, but section feeds right into that, where he talks about seasons of life. And this part really spoke to me because I'm in many seasons right now. But he says there are all kinds of seasons in life. We have seasons of education, independence, love, growth, new beginnings, sickness, seasons of health. And he says that they don't have to be these long seasons. They can be as short as a few minutes or as long as, years or months or whatever. So we can have seasons that overlap. He says that the anxiety he's noticed in the lives of his coaching clients is that they're trying to take on too many seasons at once, and some of them are naturally conflicting. And that's the part that spoke to me. I'm a mom of small children. I'm trying to work sort of full time and do this on the side, and my husband's away. And it was nice to see that I'm not the only one and that it can be done. So he says, instead of asking, how can I fit more in, which is what we think of when, new opportunities come our way, he says to consider the seasons that you are in, and decide when the right time is to complete activities, and what the right things are that you need to maximize the harvest of this particular season. And he says that when you are aware of the season you're in, you're focused on maximizing the results of that season, and we have natural clarity about our priorities, and as a byproduct, we get amplified synergy for our results. And then he also says about this, instead of asking, how much can I get done today? I'm guilty of that. I have my checklist and I try to cross as much off as I can. We should be asking, what is the most effective thing I can be doing right now with the time that I have available? And he says that this small shift can yield massive results. So, and then the next bit is about double time, part-time for full-time free time, which is really a mouthful. And basically that is that when you are focused on whatever it is that you are focused on, you work as hard as you can, double time, but for a short period of time. And then you have a full time of free time when that's completed. I think that's pretty much it. He says, take the stairs mindset is not about hard work or smart work. It's about both. The amazing thing about focusing our work at the most advantageous time is that we can get things done much faster than we otherwise would. And he does clarify as well that full-time free doesn't mean that you don't work anymore. It just means that you've set the foundation for it. And when you apply extreme discipline for a defined period of time or season, you create freedom for yourself from the stress and worry that comes from typical performance. So free time isn't, free time. It's freer. And then discipline creates freedom, but timing is everything, is one of the quotes that he pulled from a friend of his. The next section is applying. He creates this big acronym, DTPTFTFT, which is double time, part-time, full-time, free time. He talks about how we have to pay the price for success in any endeavor, and how, according to the harvest principle of schedule, it almost always comes precisely through imbalance. And he says a healthy approach to this is to ask the question, is what I'm doing right now the best use of my time at this particular moment? Am I accomplishing the most important item at the most opportune time? I thought that was really applicable to us, because sometimes I like to do the things that are easy like put stickers on catalogs, but that's not what would be best for that particular time. And he says, of course, what is timely and what is most important are constantly shuffling and changing according to each of the areas of our daily lives. And then he goes into scheduling. I mean, this whole chapter is scheduling. But that scheduling is a mindset, and it's something that you have to be practiced with. You have to have a regimented routine, and that is something that comes from pen and paper, or Tiffany, he busts out the spreadsheet later. He says you have to have this attitude of, I have a goal and I have a plan that I know will take me to the destination I want. It is broken down to exactly what I need to be doing every second of every day, and I'm irrevocably committed to working according to that plan. The results always seem to just take care of themselves. And he says that's what successful people do. And it seems tedious to kind of schedule every single second of your day, but it will lead to success. He spends kind of a lot of time talking about the story of rocks, pebbles, and sand, where, well, you can read it. It's on page 134. I don't want to waste your eclipse time. But just how things seem full. They put in the rocks. Is it full? They put in, it's not, because he puts in pebbles and it's not. So he puts in the sand and it's not. And then he pours in the water and then it's finally full. Your time is like that. And he says you have to build, put the big things in first, and you find time for the little things like emails and, whatnot. He says the moment you tell yourself you're too busy is the moment you stop thinking creatively about how to get other potentially important items into your schedule and your routine. So, it says you can fit it in, and he uses the example of other successful people that, do so much more than we do in our busy lives, that have friends, families, businesses, philanthropy, spiritual lives, yada, yada, yada. So he has the case study of his friend who is crazy good at real estate, but he's got family time scheduled and he's got email scheduled, and it just is a routine for him. And then he goes into the fundamental 5, and he talks about how every successful person really has this fundamental 5 focus areas of their life, and they are faith, family, fitness, fun, faculty, and finances. And those are on page 140. But to summarize, faith is your faith, and says successful people, by and large, all have some sort of faith belief system, and that is kind of the central point of their life, because everything revolves around that. So as an example of his scheduling thing, he talks about how you can start a day with 10 minutes of reading from the Bible or whatever inspirational, whatever you have, and then successful people engage in church or another spiritual practice of fellowship at least once a week. So that's scheduled hard into successful people's days. Family, he suggests having a date night with your significant other, your children, whatever. Says it may not happen every day. And when he polled, successful people, they tended to be on Wednesdays. Fitness, taking care of yourself, your physical body, is important. And he says to truly be physically fit, you can do that in 30 minutes a day once you've got the baseline, or not a day, 3 times a week. Once you've got a base fitness, once you've established that, you can do minor, short physical activity every day, some push-ups, some sit-ups, whatever, and just do a 30-minute workout 3 days a week and have that scheduled in. Faculty is your work. And he says have one uninterrupted night per week. or more during a particularly busy season. We're coming up to a really busy season for us. So maybe 2 nights a week that are scheduled where you can focus and really dedicate that time without interruptions to your business. And then finances, he says, review your finances every Sunday night after this call, probably. And he says that that's just kind of a model of that in looking at successful people. They've got that regimented schedule, and obviously you do what works for you, but that's what works. And so his next section is creating your ideal schedule. And he says in here, if you don't know what your ideal ideal week looks like, you will never have one. To create a schedule, all you need is a spreadsheet, Tiffany, that is your jar. Dr. Stephen Covey has taught for years to put the big rocks in first. So putting your fundamental 5 in there. This is when I have family time. This is when I, have to work, whatever. And then you can fill in the pebbles and the sand and the water of putting stickers on your catalogs or, going to the grocery store or whatever. There's another case study. And in this case study, the person has a calendar in his closet that he just kind of makes notes on. But one of the things about that I thought was interesting was that he made sure to limit his internet browsing and television time to 7 hours a week. That's an hour a day, which, he's successful. That's something that he's chosen to do that. I get swept away in both of those things too often. He says, having a schedule allows you to take the thought process out of much of which activities you should or shouldn't spend time on because you've thought through them all at once in a logical state rather than waiting until you're in the moment emotionally deciding whether or not you feel like taking certain actions. And that really spoke to me personally. This is a long chapter, y'all. I'm sorry. The next section is preparing for the inevitable, and that is that you're going to get off schedule. It just happens. You put in whatever and it doesn't happen, and then you feel kind of a kilter and bad news. And he says the solution to going off schedule is to learn to shift your focus away from the results that aren't within your control. You can't do anything about those shifts, but you can focus on the things that are in your control. You can't let those shifts discourage you and send you completely off track. Learning to take pride in controlling the activities that are within your power and letting go of the worry and fear attached to the results that are not, is his concluding advice to this section. And he says that today's work turns into next week's success. So if you stay on track, even when your schedule, crumbles, you'll still see results. And then the last section, he talks about the slinky, and how it just keeps moving. Once it gets started, it keeps moving, but you are the vessel that puts it into motion. And so that hard work is what, makes your rewards reap, seemingly themselves, but it's not on its own. He says you always get paid for how hard you work, but it's not always right away. Your schedule works like a slinky because the efforts you make create the energy, they lead the way, and the results follow. And he says that there's a gap between the work that you put in from being on schedule and the results start to show up. So don't be discouraged by that. And he quotes Dave Ramsey, and this chapter has a couple of instances of Dave Ramsey, but you put the work in now, and it'll take a while, but you'll see results. And then 2 more things. He says to get relentless about putting your self-esteem into your work habits instead of your results. So don't be so results oriented. I know when I don't have the results that I want from a show or something, I feel bad about it. But if I know that I've done everything as far as host coaching or whatever, I've done all I can, and the rest is, they're just details that I can't control. So I have to let it go and move on. And so he closes with, if even during those times when you're off schedule, you can maintain the right mindset and recommit to getting back on track, winning will inevitably follow. It's all a matter of your perspective. So make a schedule, keep on it, and work hard. The end.
Thank you, Amy.
Or
All right, Kelly, are you ready for us to go back to you?
I am so sorry. We had the internet people out here Saturday, so I don't know what's going on. Yes, I'll come back in and pick up.
The last thing we heard was something about the end of your day.
Okay. And then did I start with compliments, that which is recognized is repeated?
No, we didn't hear that part.
Okay. All right. So that's where I was going to segue next, is into compliments, which I think you as leaders know what we recognize will get repeated. And even if we have to start with them doing 2 shows a month to kind of build from there, or if it's getting on the phone, whatever that behavior is, to kind of repeat that. One of my favorite stories that he told in this was called Lara's Story. And the subtitle on this was Seeing People for Who They Can Become. And she wanted to do the book thing that he was doing. And basically, she was all excited about this. She went and told her friends, and they said, no, it's not a good idea, which I can so relate this to Pampered Chef. You might have somebody at a show the night before, they're thinking, I want to do this, and then they go home and talk to their support group, whoever that is, husband, mother, and they're like, why would you want to do that, and so it really kind of just reiterates the fact that we have to believe in them and kind of let them know, yes, I think you can do this. You have nothing to risk to give it a try. And basically what happened was she didn't think she had enough confidence to do this. And really, it just is kind of those people that start chipping that kind of cast that shadow of doubt. And it's really easy for people to bow out. But she actually did very well with it. She went ahead and proceeded, and she won the contest at the end of the year. So I think there's a lot to holding people accountable and helping them walk that walk. There was negative ways to weaken your word. And that's kind of, I think for women, one thing we have to be very careful with is gossip. I don't care what it is. It just kind of starts tearing others down. And we want to make sure that we are kind of helping people so they are not getting caught in that trap. That's why I've always loved our company. Kind of what we preach is for people to kind of dump up. So if they have a problem, I think, as leaders, we maybe have heard things. And so then we can kind of help them listen a little bit, maybe vent, dump on us, but not to tear others down. And I think I loved his checklist for 7 guidelines. The first one is think before you speak. Choose your words carefully is the second one. The third was do what you say you will. And I think where that's very important is also for customers. If I don't know, probably one of the things I kind of lack on is, I always say I'm going to send them that file of recipes or something, covered baker, and then I'm like, oh my gosh, I go through my door price slips or wherever I made my little note to do that, So I always say, if you don't get it right away, send me an email so I can follow up. Be where you promise you will. Number 5 was resist the urge to use emotionally charged, untamed language. And he shared the example. I loved it. I can't remember what age he was, but he was cussing, and his mom said, I really don't like it when you do that. And it kind of made him take pause and say, yeah, really, if she doesn't like that, why am I doing that? And then he's decided I shouldn't be doing that really at all. If it offends my mom, it probably offends other people. Number 6, always assume the mic is on. and that everyone will hear what you're going to say. And one of the best examples for me is our priest when he does sermons on Sunday, the Mass, and then he'll go to the back of the church to greet people, and he's still mic'd. And so sometimes we hear those private conversations maybe that he's having with a parishioner as they leave. But it just always makes me think you never know when somebody maybe is hearing what you say. There were times at conference when I was in line with somebody that maybe I respected, and I don't know, if you don't realize people are always watching and listening, you just have to be very careful of that. And number 7 was use empowering language when speaking about yourself and others. So what I started this out with, this chapter, was you think it, you speak it, you act it, it happens. I love that. I just really think in a nutshell, that's kind of what integrity is about. And those were kind of my take-home bullet points that I had for that.
All right, then I think our next section is faith with Carrie.
Okay, I have to admit, I'm really behind on my reading, but I did get this chapter read, so bear with me. But when I first thought about faith, of course, we all think about what kind of faith that we might have spiritually, too. But I also think that it's important not just about that, but like our faith in ourselves and our business and stuff. And I think he addressed a lot of that. And at the very beginning, when he was talking about the Dead Poet Society in that movie, how Robin Williams stood on top of the desk, and he said, I stand on the desk to remind myself that we must constantly look at things in a different way. There may not be a more relevant statement to improving our self-discipline than that. To change your behavior, you have to change your perspective. And this is good for me because right now I feel like sometimes I just don't have very much self-control about anything lately. And I'm just being honest, like whatever the case may be. And so it's really, really good that I need to go through and finish reading chapters I haven't. But anyway, some things that I highlighted is if we have enough faith to believe that there's a future coming, and we need to make appropriate count of them, we'd also have the basis for more appropriate perspective relating to today's issues and struggles. When we lose faith in, this is what I liked, when we lose faith in the future, we lose focus of where today fits into the greater timeline of the histories of our life. And we'll have no basis for perspective. The size of today's challenge is measured only against the shortness of today. And I found that was like kind of eye-opening. It was like, because we can, a lot of times we can really, probably goes along with everything else, but sometimes I feel like I can just kind of whittle the day away, and then I come to the shortness of the day and on that. Faith can take many forms. It can mean faith in God or some higher power. It doesn't matter what you call it, even if you give a name to all of it. Having it means a difference between constantly worrying about the present and having the peace of knowing that you're going to be transcends life today settings from the long run. A challenge in respect to today is a big problem. A challenge in respect to our life span is a small problem. A challenge in respect to eternity is no problem. So to me, I kind of got from that is we have a problem today that might look huge, but if you put it in perspective to our life, not so huge. And then if you put it in perspective for eternity, then it becomes really, really small. And I guess I hadn't thought of it that way because sometimes I think I can get really wrapped up on today's big problem. And I've heard my own husband say, in reality, when it comes to eternity, it's not really going to matter. And so I think sometimes if we can keep that in perspective, I think it's going to keep our emotions a little bit more in whack and not get all freaked out. And also having faith in the long-term perspective enables us to make better decisions. It gives us strength to endure short-term sacrifices. It empowers you with the conviction of knowing that things will work out for the better if you put it to work. Okay, this is a good one too. Sometimes we make choices not out of the lack of discipline, but out of the lack of perspective and faith. And then he had the perspective principle of faith, and it's our ability to have peace directly inappropriate to the terms of our perspective. It's a moment when I decided to put his faith and hope into enjoyable results more than enjoyable processes. For you in life, especially if you're having difficulty making short-term decisions, you want to change your perspective. So there's a lot of talk about changing your perspective. And also, he wrote that he noted that in almost always in life, when he's frustrated, depressed, or disappointed, his perspective has been reduced from here to now. And he also gave that context test where he said that sometimes he'll just look at his pen and see the point of his pen, and then when he takes it out, then he has a big wider area there, and it kind of makes the perspective really a little bit wider there too. And I thought narrow scope versus broad scope was kind of good. You guys, I feel really bad because I didn't get through everything.
And you shouldn't, because really we're just looking for a few highlights, Carrie. So I think you've shared some good things.
Well, here's one too that I had highlighted. People without discipline or without faith don't get that same payoff of peace. If you don't have enough faith that things will work out for the better or even get started, if you don't have the discipline to do everything in your power to make that happen, then you know deep down why the results turned out the way they did, and you didn't do everything that you could have. So anyway, that's about all I have tonight.
Thanks, Carrie.
Yep.
All right, Debbie, you're up with action.
Sorry, had to unmute. And I thought we were only doing 2 chapters tonight, so I didn't realize we were doing the rest of the book, but I have listened to this twice on tape and read it once, so I should be good. The basic thing on, let me get to the right page. I was making notes on Carrie's talk, sorry. When I read this, the law of the pendulum that he talks about, it really struck a note with me because one of my favorite teachers in college was my physics teacher, and he did the same thing in physics. He had a kid stand against the wall with a bowling ball that he had a chain, and the kid stood there, and you could see him. I mean, he let the bowling ball go, and it swung back, and it just was right at his face. And I remember going to that class and thinking, oh my gosh, that kid was brave for standing there. But indeed it worked. It didn't, it came so close to his nose, but it didn't actually touch him or hurt him. So when I started reading this, I thought, wow, I've seen that before in my physics class in college. The thing about that he talks about in this is he points out that he doesn't tell you in this book that what you should or shouldn't do. And he says, I don't need to tell you what you should do. Everybody knows what they should do. If they don't, they can find out what they should do. But what you really have to do is then take action. So as you read through this book and you see all the points he makes, it's really up to you whether or not you act on it. So one of the things that I underlined in my chapter here is that you can understand everything that we've talked about in this book but not believe in it. The only way that we will know if you believe in any of what you've read in this book is if it actually causes you to make different decisions and take different actions. So you yourself will be able to know, because you will take different actions and you will see different things happening in your life. And another thing I found interesting is he talks about his first pastor, and his pastor told him, Roy, if you want to know what a person believes in, just look at their calendar and their checkbook, because what they spend their time and their money on is what they believe in the most. I thought that was kind of telling. So I think that'd be interesting to go back and, kind of self-evaluate your own checkbook and your own calendar as to what, do you spend your time watching TV? Do you spend your time with your kids? Do you spend your money on your kids? It was just kind of telling. It was kind of a neat thing to do. Another point that, he really does a good job on the large print on the sides of the page. As I'm reading through the book, those are the things I end up underlining in the book. But one thing that he said, that it says it's not enough to just recognize your inadequacies. You have to care enough to want to resolve them. So I thought that was interesting. And being a successful person requires that you take action. Two, when I'm probably going to listen to this book a couple more times, because, you know, when you listen and read over and over again, you take different things that maybe you didn't catch, or they didn't hit a high point with you the first time. But when he talks about all of the thought and understanding is critical, because the right mindset precedes your proper movement. But the bottom line of seeing change and results in your life is that you need to act. You need to go and you do something right away. So as I've listened to this, I'm in a different frame of mind, I think, every time I listen to it, but different things pop up and they make me really think about them. He says, action's important. You have to start doing the things that you don't feel like doing. I always remember Nancy Cho saying, and I said this before, but saying years ago that she never watched Oprah when Oprah was so big. I never watched Oprah. You know, I don't know what Oprah does, because I'm busy working. I'm busy building my business. And obviously she was. I guess I watched too much Oprah. But obviously she was building her business. But okay. Another thing that I liked was when he said that, you know, we all make New Year's resolutions. And he said, any resolution that's made today must be made again tomorrow. So this is kind of off the wall too, but I was talking to this old guy that's a friend of the family, and he always likes to pull my chain, or anybody's chain. He likes to tease everybody. And he kept telling me about, I went into this bar the other day and I saw a sign on the wall that said, free beer tomorrow. And he looked at me and he's like, I just smiled at him, and he's kind of like, he's like in his 80s. He goes, did you get that? I told him he should go in and change the sign, make his own little white sign that said free beer today, put the today over tomorrow, and see if he got anything from it. But that just reminded me of it when I was reading this, because, you know, tomorrow is a new day. And if we want to do good with the things that we're changing in our lives, or the things that we want to do, whether it be lose weight or get more bookings or do more leadership, we need to do it every day. We need to set that goal every day. We need to make that resolution and say it again every day. So I thought that was kind of interesting too. He talks about the law of diminishing event and intent, and that's kind of what I just was talked about in a backwards way, but you have to keep working on it every day. Of course, he talks about the New Year's resolution, how many people, when you go to the gym on New Year's Eve or the day after, it's packed. And then as you go on, it gets less and less and less. So those people aren't following through with their intent. So, okay, he talks about the three phases of an action. The first one is fear. I'm scared to do it. The second one is entitlement. I shouldn't have to do it. And the third one is perfectionism, because I won't try to do it if I can't do it right. And I think a lot of these you can do in your own life, but you can also do with Pampered Chef. A lot of people are afraid to do what they set out to do. And I can remember years ago when I thought to myself, I will never send out my host invitation. That's not my job. She's getting all the free stuff, blah, 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 blah. I shouldn't have to do that. And then once I had my car accident and I had to find out a way to make my shows higher because I couldn't do very many, I started sending out my hosts invitations, and that's when I started having $1,000 shows. So that kind of hit that trigger with me. And perfectionism. Sometimes I can be a perfectionist. I want things to be right. And it's kind of like, I kind of get stuck on doing the little things, kind of like Amy said. It's like my house needs to be picked up before I can do anything with my business, or this has to be set straight before. I feel like it has to be perfect before I can move on, instead of just making my time worth what it, making myself do the things that are the best for me, instead of, I don't know if that's making sense, but it does say that action is a cure for fear. So really, a lot of times when you're afraid to do something, if you'll just do it scared. I like the little story in here about the gal that was, did you guys, she's up on a huge, in a huge building, and there's a fire. And she is so afraid of heights. And her coworkers try to get her to run down the stairs, and she won't do it. She's that afraid of heights that if she has to go to the stairs to get out, she can't do it. That's the only way to save her. And so a fireman goes up to her and says, you know, you have to do this. And she's kicking and screaming, and he's trying to save her life. And he finally just gets in her face, holds both sides of her head and says, you have to do it. You just have to do it scared. Be afraid, but do it anyway. And that was so powerful to me, that this woman wouldn't save her own life because she was afraid, because it was an open stairwell, I guess. She was afraid of heights. So sometimes you just have to do it, and do it afraid, but get it done. Just get it done. So I thought that was interesting. Entitlement, it always makes me think of when I see, this is maybe bad, but sometimes you see kids that are so entitled that they have to have something, or they, you know, you always think, why, you know, we didn't have those things growing up. So, but you got to be careful that you don't let entitlement get in the way. His quote there is, the exact moment entitlement engages is the same moment our self-discipline engages. So that kind of struck a chord with me too. So imperfectionism, we talked about that. What was once a harmless decision of opting for safety soon becomes a limiting and even debilitating lifestyle of an action. So you can't always be perfect in life. So I do like a call to action he has at the end. I know when we went to this at conference, every time I saw an escalator or stairs, I took the stairs after he said that, except for at the airport, because I love those walking flat escalators. But I did walk on them quickly because it just feels like you're getting somewhere really fast, like you're accomplishing something. So I did do that, but that's the only time. I just think this is a really good book to keep around and to read over and over and over again. And I'm not done with it yet, even though we're done with it. I did not get to go back and do all, I don't know if you guys did, but do all the little work and things you can download. Did anybody do all that other stuff?
Not yet.
I think that will be really powerful to do. And I'm planning on doing that, going back. Because when I listen to it, it always has a little side note to do blah, 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 blah on this chapter, you know, look this up or whatever. And I'm really anxious to get that done. I have not done that yet. But I thought this was a really, really thought-provoking book. And all the action items are in the back if you want to know that. That's all.
Thanks, Debbie.
All right, so that's a wrap.
I'm sorry, I just want to say I love that chapter on action. That was just, you know, it kind of gets me moving a little bit.
I love it. Go ahead.
Beyond changing your own life, how much your actions can be contagious and inspire others around you, which I think is important in your life. I don't have no kids around here to be contagious anymore, but some of you do. So, but I think we can do it with our spouses too, huh?
Absolutely. Well, I guess, I don't know if we're going to look for a new book. Is there something you guys are thinking you want to start doing kind of the last quarter of the year?
Yeah, he has another book called Procrastinate on Purpose that I've also listened to.
Yeah, I think Nancy Joe's group was doing that after conference. And I didn't join in on that because I wanted to read this one first.
Yeah.
I think John Gordon's got one out too. I'm trying to see where I got the winning team or something, which I thought might be a fun one. Maybe we can shoot some ideas into the page and see what people want to do for sure. It's probably going to be, this is kind of our core group probably right here that probably is going to be able to speak up and say kind of what they want.
I think you should check out the Procrastinate on Purpose.
I'm good with that.
And that's by who? Debbie?
Same guy.
Lori.
His next book.
Okay.
Next, I have that one on tape too, on CD.
And how many
Can't you also like pay for it on Amazon to be audio?
Yeah, I think you can. I just like to get them on CD because
Yeah.
I put them in my car.
That's what I do with my Dave Ramsey CDs is I put them like you were saying about different things affect you at different times, different seasons of your life. Like, you know, for example, when Dave talks about like paying off your debt, like right now that doesn't apply to us, but paying for college tuition will.
Yeah. I like the chapter on the seasons of your life too.
Yeah, I definitely want to read that one. Read into that one more. I have to admit, I did not read all the chapters. I kind of like got it stuck in my bag and then I forgot to dig to the bottom of it. So thank you guys for summarizing it for me.
We can go back and read it because I haven't finished all of it either. So.
Yeah, I definitely want to go back. So I like that I have these notes to go by. So I was typing as fast as you guys were speaking. So if you have things that you've already typed or like even if you scratched them down and when you read through these, if I missed something, let me know. I did post on the director page, not the organization page, but the director page, the link to the notebook that holds all these notes. So they have not only the notes for these leader calls, but also for the organizational calls.
Thank you for doing that. That's awesome.
And it's public, so you shouldn't have to like, I've learned a little bit with Evernote this week. And so like, I think the first time Michelle went to go look at it, it sent me a message saying you were trying to access it. So I think I've changed that so that it's just a public link. Anybody can view it that has the link.
Thank you so much.
Yes. Much appreciated.
So hopefully there are people who are not here tonight who take the time to go in and look at the notes along with this recording and glean from it what they can.
I thought Christy was going to come tonight, Kelly. She asked me what we were covering.
You talked to her today?
She texted me.